Hey guys, sorry this is a little late, but like I said, I had a meeting yesterday after work and I didn't have time to go back in my room and make this video. So it's coming a little late, but better late than never. The first thing we did yesterday was talked about the infographic analysis activity that we did last Thursday while we were in the library. It wasn't that big, it was just one question, but what I wanted to do was talk about the policies that I guess in this case, the Asian Development Bank, which is working to fight poverty in Asia and the Pacific. I got that from right down at the bottom corner of the page here. Whoops. Down in here. This infographic was highlighting how by decreasing that gender gap, by lessening the gap between men and women, we could actually help solve the food crisis. So there were 5 policies in particular that this infographic suggests we put in place. First of all, they talked about changing laws and regulations that regard land ownership. If you remember, back in the beginning of the year, we read a story about, a woman who was married to a man, and that man died. And when she was left behind, she didn't get any of his land because the laws stated that the woman, being a lesser gender, was not entitled to that land. Instead, it all went to the family, as did her child. So she was absolutely left with nothing and expected to just leave. Those are the types of laws that we need to address worldwide to make sure that there's more equality between men and women. Which brings us to the second one, basically put programs in place that will boost gender equality. We've talked about this, update our education and employment policies to make sure that there's more equal opportunity. If we could increase women's access to childcare, give her support in terms of agricultural work, and also help her with credit services, banking services, help her borrow money if she needs to, help her with saving money. We could actually help her with her food security strategies. And we talked a little bit about what food security means when we talked about poverty and hunger. Let's say food insecurity is when in a given week, you're not sure if you're going to eat or not. Hunger is no food, and when you do have access to food, that's a good thing. But food insecurity is when you're not sure if you're going to have access or not. The last aspect here is to fine-tune social protection programs. So within the labor market and employment programs, we want to make sure that women are protected and have fair workers' rights. So we talked about that for a few minutes. The next thing we did was take a look at the Behind the Brands website that I had all of you look at. And I just thought this was so interesting. Let me clear out my whiteboard tools here. There we go. We just talked about how interesting it was that there were basically 10 major companies that owned all of these brands, and we were surprised at how low all of these scores were. You have a brand like Evian, which is owned by Danone, I guess it's how you pronounce it, and then when you look at their score, 31% poor. And when you scroll down, it actually gives you a breakdown, one in terms of land, one in terms of women, which is tragic considering what we've just been discussing. And while this looks bleak, the scores are pretty similar for most of the other brands. The 2 companies that actually stood out as being some of the highest, Coca-Cola did very well, and Unilever did really well. I forget what on here is owned by Unilever. I think Ben & Jerry's might be. Yeah, Unilever.
Oh. Mr. Bolger, please dial 1000. Mr. Bolger.
Sorry about that. Unilever scored fair, 63%, which is a really good score. In fact, I think it's the highest score. But it still shows that they have some room.
Mr. Bolger, come to the main office. Mr. Bolger, please.
Sorry. It shows that there's still a little bit of room for improvement. And one thing that I like is down here at the bottom, you can actually see the other brands that they own. So if you're looking to purchase some brands, these are the ones you want to look for. Hellmann's, Knorr, Lipton, Slim Fast. Not that you should be drinking Slim Fast, but anyway, products to look for. And if anything, I hope that this helps guide some of your decision making when you go shopping with your parents. All right, then we got into, let's see, let me just clear out our drawing. Then we got into MDG number 5. MDG number 5 is about maternal mortality rate, which basically means the number of women, the number of mothers who die during complications from pregnancy or childbirth. So we're not just talking about women dying or mothers dying, boy, it sounds so morbid, but women who die as a result of pregnancy or childbirth specifically. So we read through this for a second. I'll give you a second. Why don't you pause it, read through this on your own, and I really want you to get into interacting with the text, highlighting important points, writing questions in the margins, circling if necessary, doing whatever you need to do so that you're really making sense of what you're reading. So why don't you pause the video and do that now. We'll talk about it when you come back. Okay, so when we went over this video, we talked about what's the problem here. And the problem that we saw was that in 1996, oops, I'm sorry, I should have my highlighter for this. Let's see, in 1996, it was calculated that 539 women in Nepal were dying for every 1,000 births. So why was that? It was because of a lack of good health services. It was because of lack of knowledge about nutrition and the right food that you should be eating during your pregnancy, and because of difficulties in reaching hospitals. In some places, there aren't even roads that you can get to. So we followed this one woman, Hida, and what we saw was that when she was pregnant, she actually kept working hard. Let's see, carried on working hard, and you saw that she did farm work by hand. She had no special care, and she gave birth at home. Now, when I was pregnant with Denver, I was told not to lift anything more than 25 pounds, to rest as much as possible, keep my feet up, not a special diet, but there were certainly restrictions on what I could eat. I was taking special vitamins. I went to a hospital to give birth. So, we have a very healthy process in place, whereas in this case, Nepal, that wasn't the case. So what's being done to help? We're seeing aid from richer companies. And with that aid, Nepal is buying better medical equipment, better medicines. They're renovating their hospitals. They're providing midwifery training, which basically what that is a midwife is not a doctor or a nurse, but she's a trained specialist with pregnancy and birth. And she can go to a hospital with a mother and she can deliver the baby. Also, in terms of a social program, they're encouraging women to go to the hospital. So all of these things are helping Nepal to reduce their maternal mortality rate, which is, again, the number of women who are dying during pregnancy or childbirth. All right, so after we looked at that, scroll down, we want to know what the target is. So you should write this down. The target for MDG number 5 is to reduce the maternal mortality rate by 3/4 between 1990 and 2015. And we talked about whether or not we were going to meet this goal, whether the class thought we could meet this goal. And everyone said yes for the most part, for different reasons. I didn't see many no's. All right, so what we did after that was we went back to our note-taking guide, and we decided to look at maternal mortality rates around the world using the CIA fact book. So we were interested in the United States because that's us, and South Sudan because theirs is incredibly high. Nepal because we just read about Nepal, and Nepal, it seemed appropriate to follow up with them. And Estonia because theirs is incredibly low. And then we figured 2 of our choice, 2 that we would just be interested in. So if you go to the CIA World Fact Book, you'll see that South Sudan is number 1 with 2,054 deaths for every 100,000 live births. So after reading that, we just documented that number. Let me show you. We just documented that number right here on the table. All right. So going back to the World Fact Book, we scroll down a little. We notice that the first, 22 countries just about are all in Africa with very high numbers. Coming down, let's see, here's India with 200. People were interested in looking at India. Scroll down. Here's Nepal, 61st ranking, 170 deaths per 100,000 births. Coming down some more. North Korea, everyone was surprised that we even had data on North Korea, but you'll see 81 deaths per 100,000 births. A lot of the students questioned if that was even accurate. All right, coming down again, we see China with 37. It's an okay number, I guess. come down some more. I asked the class, where do you think America fits in here? So we went all the way down to the bottom because we assumed we would be the first, but we weren't. Estonia is down there at the bottom with the least amount of deaths per 100,000 births, 2. And you'll see we have a slow incline then, 3 for Greece, 3 for Singapore, 4 for Italy, and we scroll up, 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 up. And United Kingdom comes in at 12, Canada at 12, come up some more. There's the United States with 21, which we were all kind of surprised. That number is very low, but we thought if anybody was going to have 2, it would be us. So we were a little surprised by that data. All right, so we came back here then, and we wanted to know, did Nepal make any progress? Yes, they certainly did. They went from 539 deaths, I believe, for every 1,000. That's more than half. More than half of their women were dying in pregnancy or childbirth. Now it's 170. Was it 170? Yes, 170 for every 100,000 deaths. So they decreased tremendously. It looks like that foreign aid is working. And then lastly, does any of the data surprise you? We talked about that just now. All right. Last thing I want to show you, we looked at this table here on the next page, and basically what we did was we had to match up the start of each sentence with the end of each sentence. So every minute of every day, somewhere in the world, and most often in a developing country, let me pick my pen, a woman dies from complications in pregnancy or childbirth. Then we said most maternal deaths could be prevented if women just had access to appropriate health care during pregnancy and childbirth and immediately afterwards. I like this next one. More than a decade of research has shown that small and affordable measures can significantly reduce the health risks that women face when they become pregnant. That's awesome, because what that says is that this goal is attainable. All right, when a woman dies during childbirth, communities are denied her paid and unpaid labor. Excuse me. And countries forego her contributions to economic and social development. Now, this is going to sound terrible, but when a woman dies in pregnancy or childbirth, that is a tragedy, a true tragedy to her family and her community. But on a bigger level, that's actually a tragedy for her country as well, because we've been talking about how by empowering women, we're helping the entire country because they get educated, they get good jobs, they contribute to the GDP, the gross domestic product, they possibly produce more food, they yield more crops through agriculture. So these are all good things for women who are empowered and contributing to their country. But if a woman dies in childbirth or pregnancy, she doesn't have that opportunity, and the country can't benefit from her empowerment. All right, the last one. Nearly all maternal deaths, 99%, occur in the developing world, making maternal mortality the health statistic with the largest disparity between developed and developing countries. Now, this I thought was really interesting. I told the class that I thought I had a firm understanding of what developed versus developing actually meant, but I don't think I did. I talked to my husband this weekend, and he kind of clarified it for me, where I understand it a little bit better now. There's many things that you can do to compare a developed country from a developing country. You can compare the population growth, you can compare the governments, the cases of HIV and AIDS, access to education, women's empowerment, whatever. But the biggest difference between a developed country and a developing country in terms of statistics, the biggest number that keeps those two types of countries apart is the maternal mortality rate, the number of mothers who are dying, which I think is an incredible fact. All right, so that's as far as... Sorry about that. A lot of interruptions this morning. This is as far as we got as of today, or I should say as of yesterday. What we're going to do today, the foreign language teachers are coming in to talk to everybody. So if we go tubing tomorrow, great. If not, we're going to finish this up. And then Thursday, you've got the foreign language teachers coming back in again. And then on Friday, we've got current events. So not a lot of time to spend on this. But anyway, I hope you learned something about maternal mortality rates. And see me if you have any questions. All right, see you later.